We heard from the President a little bit earlier, and he didn't like the questions that suggested that he lied to the American people. But why did he play down the threat posed by COVID?
He certainly did not like those questions from the White House press corps about whether he'd been lying to the American people. But, this was, to address these tapes that were released yesterday. Now, famed American journalist Bob Woodward, who helped uncover the Watergate scandal, if you remember, back in the 70s, that led to the downfall of President Nixon. He was interviewing President Trump for a new book called Rage. Now, that included 18 separate interviews, mostly by phone, all of which were recorded. Now, back in March, on 19th of March, when coronavirus was picking up steam here and was starting to belt New York, and when the president was giving daily briefings on the coronavirus with his health experts, at that point, he told Woodward on the record, on tape, "I wanted to always play it down. I still like playing it down because I don't want to create a panic." Now, this is at a time when the American public was turning to him every afternoon to hear what was going on and to understand what they could do about the pandemic. Yet today, in a hastily called press briefing, the president was forced to respond to the question of, why did you lie to the American people? And the president didn't like that question. Let's listen.
Why did you lie to the American people, and why should we trust what you have to say now?
That's a terrible question, and the phraseology, I didn't lie. What I said is we have to be calm, we can't be panicked.
Yeah.
Well, what we've also learned, and what President Trump also addressed on those tapes, is that about 3 weeks before saying he'd like to play it down, on February 28th, the National Security Advisor gave the president a briefing on coronavirus and said that this is going to be the greatest national security threat to your presidency. And the National Security Advisor today confirmed that. So we also know that on February 5, I believe, the president was talking to the Chinese leader, Xi Jinping. And he says that the Chinese leader told him then how deadly the virus was, and that in fact, it was 5 times more deadly than the flu, even though that's not what the president was at that time telling the American
Yeah, I mean,
people.
Donald Trump wasn't the only world leader to play it down. There was many. I think a lot of people underestimated just how fast and how widespread this virus would go. I mean, the trouble for a leader is that, like, what are you supposed to do if you come out and say this thing is going to kill, a million people worldwide? It's and paint a true picture, I suppose. I guess you've got to point to some kind of hope.
Hope for sure. Misleading, not so much. As a former director of the Center for Disease Control said, until the Trump administration, America had a playbook for how to handle a pandemic, and this administration threw that playbook out. The former CDC director says, we know how to do these things without causing a panic. And he mentioned 5 key principles that allow you to communicate the facts with the public without creating that kind of fear. And he went through those. So one would have thought that perhaps the president could have led from the front, I think, is how people are feeling now. I mean, they just feel like that they weren't being told the truth. And it now turns out that that is in fact the case.